and welcome to On the Way Moments, a podcast from St. Anthony on the Desert in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. On this podcast, we have the privilege of hearing stories from some pretty interesting people about their On the Way moments. I'm Jill Kyler.
And I'm Will Strong.
And today, as our special guest, is going to be my friend from many, many years, Will Strong.
That's right.
Yeah. And,
surprise.
And today we're going to be hearing about a trip that Will took recently to the Episcopal Youth Event held at the University of Maryland. So Will.
It was, okay, so the Episcopal Youth Event is the second largest gathering of Episcopalians in the world, next to General Convention.
Wow.
And it's actually designed by youth, for youth, and so there were, I think their website said 600, but it felt like, I think I had heard the count was over 1,000 students and about 500 to 600 adults, chaperones. And it was, like you said, it was held in College Park, Maryland, on the campus of University of Maryland. Mm-hmm. Beautiful campus, huge campus. Be ready, just take some walking shoes if you go. I was telling Jill that in the 5 days of traveling and everything, that I think we put on 50 plus miles in the time, and
that's great.
It was great until your feet let you know. But all that aside, I was one of the adult chaperones from the Arizona Diocese, and they call it the delegations. So each diocese is able to bring students and adults to this event, and they're called a delegation. So we were the Arizona delegation, and we had 17 students all the way from Kingman, Arizona, all the way. We had a kid from Bisbee. We had several from here in the Valley. And so I was one of them. And then our canon to Children and Family, Jana, went with us. And then the other youth director was from St. Matt's Chandler, Katie Strong, actually, which is Will Strong. We're not related, but that was a coincidence. So. Mm-hmm. So we left on July 4th, really early in the morning. 4:30 is when we asked all the students to be there, and they were actually all on time, and we got to the gate. It was easy peasy. And then the July 4th was a travel day, and then the 5th, 6th, and 7th were days at the event, and then the 8th was a travel day home. So.
Well, what was the typical day?
So the typical day was we would get up, have breakfast, of course, and then at 9 a.m. was a plenary session or an opening worship of some sort, and then go have lunch. It's like we ate a lot. Episcopalians did it well.
Well,
kids, yes. I mean, it was really one of those things we ate at like 7 or 8, and then it was like, okay, well, it's 11. I guess we should probably go eat again. And then in the afternoons, we went over to the student union, and there were breakout sessions that we could all kind of go to. And
were there students on the campus?
There were a few here and there. Summer school was going, so and it was interesting. Every once in a while you'd see a UMD shirt or whatever that wasn't attached to us. There were some college visits going on too. It was a busy campus. And then we would breakout center sessions in the afternoon, and then we'd go eat again, and then an evening of either worship, or one night there was like a game show type thing. So it was a very packed 3 days.
And the speakers.
Oh my gosh! So I don't know what expectation I had going in. It wasn't high. It wasn't low. It was just kind of. In fact, I even told you a few days before. The introvert in me was like, "Why did I sign up to do this? 6 months ago, this was a great idea." And then as it got closer, I was like, "Jill, how do I get out of this?" And it wasn't because I didn't want to go. It's just that I didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
And so. The very first speaker we had on opening day was the bishop from Missouri, Bishop Dion Johnson, and if you've never heard him speak, he's dynamic, and so the whole theme of the 3 days was the story of Esther. and how do, Esther was a time for such a time as this. And so the idea is how in this new age of faith, the theme was Regresa de Casa, or homecoming, a new age of faith, and how in this new age of faith do we as not just as Christians but as youth Christians, how do they live their lives in this new age for such a time as this? And so Bishop Dion spoke. We had some amazing evening speakers, but I think the highlight for most people was Bishop Curry.
Of course.
I have never seen so many bishops dance as they were walking, because the worship was just incredible. Like it was lively. It was a beautiful mix of older style hymns done more modernly with modern contemporary Christian music, and it was just a really beautiful moments. But Bishop Curry, even he wasn't even feeling well, and he still just brought the house down. It was just incredible. I chuckled because he would walk away from this pulpit. You could tell he was getting ready to, and people would be like, "Well, go back. You're not feeling too." And it was just, but he called it out. He just thanked everybody for their prayers, and it was just a wonderful moment. And he talked about kind of his journey to where he came from, and such a time as this for our youth.
And how did the kids react?
Oh my gosh, it was like he was like a rock star. Like it was. The cheers, the applause, the love, the energy that you could just feel, not just for him, but just for what he's done for the youth, and what he's done too for the Episcopal Church at large, with his staff being wonderfully diverse. Making the church, his goal is for all of the Episcopalians to know one Bible verse. He said, "I'm not asking for a lot," and so his thing is love. God is love, and it was just this. It was very well received by the youth.
Oh, that's great. That's
in fact, it was the highlight for a lot of the students. Was we got to see Bishop Curry before he retires next year? Like, a lot of I had never seen him speak in person. I've seen him speak. It was funny. We had one of the students on the trip. From Arizona actually ended up going to the church that she went to because her family saw Bishop Curry do the royal wedding.
Oh yeah.
And so he did with Meghan and Harry, and so there was this. They heard him speak, and they were just so drawn by his presence that they sought out an Episcopal church and have been going since. And so she was very excited to see. Bishop
that's
Curry.
Exciting. And a highlight for us who were here and not with Will was seeing Will on CBS News being interviewed by a local evening news.
It was the national news. Yeah. I had thought that it was the local news, so I was searching for it and nothing came up, and it wasn't until I got back that I got a text from Jill saying, "Hey, you were on the news." I was like, "Get out. Get out of here."
It was pretty exciting.
And it was funny because we saw him post up and people were like, "Why are they there?" And I said, "It's the 4th of July. They're doing their obligatory travel." Yeah. And I asked, I leaned over and was like, "Are you ready?" I was talking to Jan. I said, "Are they ready for me?" And like 5 minutes later, he came over and was like, "I'd like to speak to you." Okay. So
no, it was exciting for all of us to see our Will.
That's right, on national news.
TV.
That's right. We'll put the link in.
Yes, we have the link
in the show notes here.
We have the link.
Because it's wild, sure. Yeah. About minute 3.
We know.
We know.
So, what would be your on the way moment?
Oh man, I got to be honest. I had a moment where during worship, I've been trying in my life, especially this year, to put intentions to things. Whatever that looks like. And so I was putting, there was this prayer, and I'm going to include it in the show notes. It's a song. It's called the Plowshare Prayer by Spencer LaJoy, and they write this beautiful song about. You'll have to listen to it, but in my mind, I'm putting these students, these 1,000+ students' faces to this song, and it was, and just my life own too. And then I started putting my nieces and nephews' faces to it, where to the point where I got very emotional and tears And it was just that moment of God is still working. And I think sometimes we get busy and we read the news and we watch things that are going on that we're like, man, what is going on? Where is this thing? How do we do this? And we just know that God is still working. And it's just, and that whether, it was a really a beautiful moment and it was actually some other people's, it was just a song written for a lot of people that needed to hear it. And so even some of our students were like, dang, that was a good song. And just to see the students, it's always, and we've done this on with mission trips and other youth things where, some people know each other and some don't. So there's always, but just to watch the 17 that we took, just become a group. And those dynamic youth that are able to, those more extroverted youth that are more able to pull out the introverts, and it was just this really kind of a beautiful moment of melding together to where I believe this past Sunday, one of the churches was doing their summer roundup, what the youth group was, and a couple from another church went over to talk about EYE experience with them. So it was just there's still some friendships that are going on, and that was the first thing they asked when we got back was, can we keep the text strain going? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. So it's just been kind of fun to...
Well, and we found that over our years of mission trips, that we would meet up with youth groups from all around the country. And I know I still have some Facebook friends that I made on mission trips, and we started those here in 2001. So it's been going on for a long time, and it's just wonderful to stay in touch and see how our lives have what's happened since this event that we experienced together.
And I think that's absolutely right. Even in just thinking about we all had this moment, and people call it these thin spaces, and we all have this. We're connected now by this experience. Good, bad, or indifferent. I think that happens even in bad situations, but we're talking specifically in these situations that have been very thin and God inspired. Where we go, remember that one time we saw the bishop, Bishop Curry, and he was dancing? And, remember that one time we walked for 50 miles and we had blisters on our feet? Wasn't that great? And so now, in retrospect, actually as my feet have finally healed. But it's just these moments, that really bond us together.
Yeah. In youth ministry, it's so important. Well, there's such a fine line between this bonding and having a shared experience and manipulation.
Oh, for sure.
And we know what manipulation of trying to eke out certain feelings from youth, and they're too smart for that. They know what you're doing, and so to have an authentic relationship or experience at an event such as this will be something that they'll remember positively for a long time.
And the idea of this too, and you're absolutely right, because even the president of the House of Deputies, and I'm blanking on her name, but she was very delightful, and she got up and she was speaking, and she said, I could tell you this, and this, but you guys know how to sniff out. You guys are real. And so she told a very, very profound story about her life. And she goes, I wouldn't share this with my colleagues. She goes, but we're in a place that it's a safe place. And somebody asked, they did this cool thing, which I guess I'm so old school, because I'm like, they had a question and answer time, and I was like, are they really going to pass a microphone around? Is this really? But they're like, scan the QR code and type in your question. I was like, genius. But one of the questions that the kid, somebody asked, and I don't remember what the question was, but it was about sharing your story. And not just sharing your story, but sharing your story, finding the safe places. And EYE, even with the close to 2,000 people, was a safe place for people. And I think that's one thing that the Episcopal Church does very, very well, at least in my experiences, has been a very, very safe place for youth, adults, if they're willing to be able to share their stories. And we talked about that even in youth group in the past.
Sure.
That's how
so important.
It's so important to share your stories. And what we noticed and what I noticed on this trip was this became a story, a positive story, like you said, for a lot of these kids.
Yeah.
We went into DC. We when you're 7 miles away from DC and you
have to go.
You have to go. So it was the night before we were leaving. Our flight didn't leave on Saturday till like 3:30 in the afternoon. So we're like, all right, let's just, Katie, Jan, and I got together and we're like, let's just go. Let's just do this. Let's just go to the monuments at least. And so, this one kid came up, he's like, have you ever been there? I said, I've been there a couple times. And he's like, I've never been here. I'm taking all of these pictures. And I was like, go for it. Again, after 50 miles and heat, the humidity was unbearable.
We have a dry
heat, even if it's 118. But it was, and so there was this moment, I think, of the last day where we had finally, I think, all kind of hit a wall. And so we finally were like, let's just get to the airport, to where everybody in my Uber that I was riding with had fallen asleep, myself included. I'm sitting in the front seat and I'm like, don't fall asleep. It's nice and cool in here though. And I woke up a few minutes later, but it was a quite wonderful experience just for, I think, everybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts?
If you get a chance to be an adult chaperone and or a youth, it's every 3 years. They do it, and it's just throughout the United States. I think 2020, of course, they took off, and then the 2017, which we had 2 of our youth that went, was in Oklahoma, and then this one was in Baltimore. And that's another thing. If you ever fly into BWI thinking you're close to College Park, you're not.
You're not.
We had this is a youth ministry story. I guess maybe this is a final thought. So Jill and I always talk about U-turns. And if you're...
Critical skill
if you work in youth ministry of, I missed that turn. Don't worry, everyone. I can whip a 15-passenger van around. So Jana had this amazing plan of going from the airport in Baltimore to College Park. So we flew in on a Tuesday, but it was a Saturday schedule because it was the 4th of July. So we flew into, she goes, okay, we're going to catch the train. We're going to take a shuttle to the train station, the train to a bus to another bus to the campus.
Wow.
And so we take, everyone, we get our luggage. We get in the bus. There's the delegation from Colorado's with us because they happen to be on the bus. So we all end up at the train station, and the train's already delayed now, 30 minutes. So we're already in. We had to wait. So another hour and a half is what we were waiting. Okay, there was a little. It was cool in the building. They had phone chargers and crucial and a little bodega type thing. So it was fine. We were like, all right, just rest, relax. Guy comes on and says, the train that's coming down, it's been canceled. And we're like, okay. So Jana's over talking to one of the Colorado people, and they're kind of making their plan. Colorado is, and she comes over and she goes, Will and Katie. And like, yeah. And she goes, what do you say about getting Ubers? And we're like, yes. And so then we start counting. We're like, okay, we have enough adults. We have 3 adults. Oh no, the biggest one we could get is going to be fitting 7 people. That still doesn't add up, or 6 people. And we're like, okay, so we had to get the 18-year-olds to do their own Uber. We had to have them text their parents to be like, hey, Mom and Dad, is it okay if I, do this? And so it's just this moment of, we have to do this. This is just pivoting, and that's just ministry.
Youth ministry
in particular, but just really even in ministry. Yeah. But yeah, for sure, it was one of those like, oh my gosh. And then we get there. It was very nice. Pulled right up to the door, and I think we got out and said, Jan, we're doing this the rest of the trip. Anywhere we go, we're Ubering if we have to.
Forget the connections.
We're not doing any of that. And so it was just, I think if anything, we just, youth are flexible. We're flexible. We're movable. Yeah. And then, I think just be in prayer about for our youth. They're not the church of tomorrow, not the church of, next week. It's there now. and they're ready and they're willing to serve and to be a part of the church. It may look different than it has in the past, as it should. The Episcopal Church is doing a wonderful job of getting youth to be part of the General Convention, the big General Convention, as a voting member even. So there's some really good stuff that's coming forward. Some of the most dynamic bishops and speakers and priests that I've seen in a long time. So it's a beautiful movement that's ahead. And so prayers for our youth, prayers for our churches. And there was something else I was going to say, but it just slipped my mind. So,
well,
evidently.
I think what you said was just dynamic.
That's right.
What an experience.
It really was. And one of the other things too that we'll put in the show notes is, they did record all the speakers, so you can click on that and be able to watch, not just Bishop Curry, but any of the other amazing speakers. And they're funny. These Episcopal priests make me chuckle. They're good. I like a good church joke. So we'll include that in the notes as well. Another fun fact. This is just a side note. We did a jurisdictions meeting, so we're in jurisdiction 8, which includes basically west of us and Taiwan, which is really interesting. So all that to say was the priest who was kind of over our group for jurisdiction, she said, "Do you know that this is the second largest gathering of the Episcopal Church?" And we're like, "That's pretty cool." And she goes, "Do you know that there's no full-time people putting this together?" And it was ran by volunteers and volunteer students.
Youth ministry.
And so she was like, "That's why we need people at General Convention." So it was just kind of a fun experience. And I think it really got our youth to think about what their next steps are in the church.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
that's it today.
That's it for today. So very exciting stuff.
Like, thumbs up, all that good
absolutely.
stuff. And we will see you next time.
Again, be on the lookout for one of your own on the way moments.
Thanks.